The Rambo franchise has been one of the most iconic action series in Hollywood history, beginning with the release of First Blood in 1982. Created and portrayed by Sylvester Stallone, John Rambo emerged as a character representing the struggles of Vietnam War veterans returning home to a society that did not understand or appreciate the sacrifices they had made. The story of Rambo combined intense action with a deep exploration of trauma, survival, and the moral ambiguities of war. First Blood introduced audiences to a man at odds with the world around him, a solitary figure whose skills and resilience set him apart, and whose experiences during the war left him permanently scarred, both physically and emotionally. The film's success led to a series of sequels that expanded the scope of Rambo's narrative, taking him from the forests of America to the jungles of Vietnam, the deserts of Afghanistan, and even to confrontations with cartels in Mexico. Each installment built upon the mythos of Rambo as the ultimate soldier, combining high-octane action with the portrayal of a man struggling with personal loss, the morality of violence, and the pursuit of justice. After decades of cinematic presence, the latest installment in the franchise, often referred to by fans as Rambo 6, represents a departure from the traditional sequel format. Rather than continuing the narrative directly after Rambo, Last Blood in 2019, the new film, officially titled John Rambo, is a prequel. This decision reflects a desire to explore the formative years of John Rambo, a period that had previously remained largely unexplored on screen. By focusing on Rambo's early experiences, particularly his time as a young soldier in the Vietnam War, the filmmakers aim to provide audiences with insight into the events and circumstances that shaped him into the legendary figure known throughout the franchise. The approach allows for a deeper character study, exploring psychological, emotional, and physical challenges, while still delivering the high-stakes action sequences and survival elements that have defined the series. It also marks a transition point in the franchise, as Sylvester Stallone will not reprise the role, passing the mantle to a new actor, Noah Centineo, who has been confirmed to portray the younger Rambo. This casting choice has generated significant attention and debate among fans, as Centineo brings a new energy and perspective to the character while maintaining the essential qualities that define Rambo's identity. The production of John Rambo involves multiple key players in the contemporary action and thriller film industry. The film is being produced by Millennium Media, a studio with a history of action-oriented projects, in association with Lionsgate, which is expected to handle distribution. The film will be directed by Jalmari Helander, known for his work on Sisu, an action-driven narrative with strong character development. The screenplay is penned by Rory Haynes and Saurabh Nashirvani, writers who have previously worked on action and thriller projects, ensuring a narrative that balances intense action with nuanced character exploration. Principal photography is planned to take place in Thailand, a location chosen for its versatile landscapes, which can convincingly replicate the environments of Vietnam during the war, as well as other regions relevant to the storyline. The filming schedule, set to begin in early 2026, has been designed to allow for a combination of practical effects, stunts, and location shooting, preserving the authenticity and gritty realism that has been a hallmark of the franchise. The plot of John Rambo focuses on the character's development before the events of First Blood. While detailed story elements are under wraps, it is expected that the narrative will cover Rambo's enlistment, training, and experiences as a soldier in Vietnam, providing a nuanced portrayal of how these experiences impacted his psyche, skills, and worldview. The story will likely delve into themes of camaraderie, loss, moral ambiguity, and survival, highlighting the challenges faced by soldiers in combat and the enduring consequences of war on individuals and communities. The filmmakers have indicated a focus on psychological realism alongside traditional action sequences, suggesting that the film will provide both visceral thrills and a deeper understanding of Rambo as a human being rather than simply a larger-than-life action hero. By doing so, the film seeks to honor the legacy of the character while expanding the narrative scope to explore new dimensions of his life and choices. The cast of the film, led by Noah Centineo as the young John Rambo, represents a departure from the traditional depiction of the character. Centineo is tasked with embodying both the physical prowess and the emotional depth that have always defined Rambo. While Stallone's portrayal emphasized a seasoned, battle-hardened veteran, Centinio's performance is expected to focus on the transformation of a young man into a legendary figure, highlighting vulnerabilities, fears, and moments of moral decision-making that shape his trajectory. Other supporting cast members have not been officially announced, but the production team has indicated a commitment to assembling a strong ensemble capable of portraying both the intensity of combat and the interpersonal dynamic central to Rambo's story. The absence of Stallone in a starring role is notable, but the actor has expressed support for the project, recognizing the value of exploring the character's origins and ensuring the continuity of the franchise for new audiences. The release date for John Rambo has not yet been officially confirmed. Given the planned production start in early 2026, industry estimates suggest a potential release in late 2026 or 2027. The timing will allow for a full production and post-production process, including editing, special effects, sound design, and marketing. The absence of an official trailer or promotional campaign at this stage means that audience anticipation is primarily driven by the legacy of the franchise, casting announcements, and statements from the filmmakers. Once a trailer is released, it is expected to generate significant media attention, given the enduring popularity of the Rambo character and the curiosity surrounding a prequel exploring his formative years. The Rambo franchise has always combined high-octane action with explorations of deeper themes, including trauma, survival, justice, and morality. Each film has contributed to the mythology of John Rambo while addressing contemporary social and political issues, particularly those relating to the experiences of veterans and the consequences of war. By situating John Rambo as a prequel, the filmmakers have the opportunity to examine the character's motivations, fears, and ethical dilemmas in a historical context, offering insights that enrich the narrative and provide audiences with a more complete understanding of the legendary action hero. The film's emphasis on authenticity, psychological realism, and thematic depth is intended to resonate with both longtime fans and new viewers, bridging generational gaps while honoring the original material. Fan speculation about Rambo 6 often conflates rumors with official announcements, making it essential to distinguish verified information from unconfirmed reports. While many online sources have speculated about sequels continuing the narrative after Last Blood, these remain unverified. The officially confirmed project, John Rambo, focuses on a prequel narrative, and all current production details have been corroborated by reputable industry sources. This distinction is important for understanding the direction of the franchise and setting expectations for audiences eager for new content. By clarifying what is confirmed versus rumored, the franchise maintains credibility while fostering excitement for the upcoming film. The evolution of the Rambo character over the decades reflects broader trends in action cinema, societal attitudes toward veterans, and the cultural significance of heroism and survival. From a solitary man resisting authority in First Blood to a global warrior confronting injustice in later films, Rambo's journey mirrors historical and political contexts while maintaining a focus on individual resilience and moral complexity. The prequel approach allows the filmmakers to explore the genesis of these traits, examining how early experiences, challenges, and relationships contribute to the formation of a figure capable of extraordinary feats. This narrative strategy enriches the character, offering a layered portrayal that extends beyond simple action tropes. The decision to cast a younger actor, utilize authentic locations, and emphasize both action and psychological depth suggests that John Rambo aims to balance franchise continuity with innovative storytelling. By situating the story in the Vietnam War era and exploring formative experiences, the film promises to deepen the audience's understanding of John Rambo, providing context for his decisions, skills, and worldview as seen in previous films. This approach aligns with contemporary trends in franchise filmmaking, where origin stories and character development are increasingly valued alongside spectacle and action. The legacy of the Rambo franchise is defined not only by its action sequences but also by its portrayal of a complex, resilient, and morally nuanced hero. The upcoming prequel seeks to honor this legacy while expanding the narrative, offering audiences insight into the formative experiences that shaped Rambo. Through careful attention to casting, production design, screenplay development, and thematic exploration, John Rambo positions itself as both a continuation of the franchise's tradition and an innovative exploration of a beloved character. The Rambo franchise is one of the most enduring and iconic action series in cinematic history, tracing its origins to the 1972 novel First Blood by David Morrell, which introduced the character of John Rambo, a Vietnam War veteran struggling to reintegrate into civilian life while grappling with the psychological and emotional aftermath of combat. Morrell's novel established the character as a deeply complex figure, combining extraordinary survival skills with a fragile and traumatized psyche. This literary introduction laid the foundation for a cinematic interpretation that would redefine action heroes and influence generations of filmmakers and audiences alike. The 1982 adaptation, First Blood, directed by Ted Kotcheff and starring Sylvester Stallone, translated this nuanced characterization into a compelling visual narrative. Stallone's performance emphasized both physical prowess and emotional depth, portraying Rambo as a man caught between the discipline instilled in him by military training and the alienation and misunderstanding he faced in civilian society. The film's plot centers on Rambo wandering into a small town, being harassed and mistreated by local law enforcement, and ultimately resorting to guerrilla tactics to survive in the surrounding wilderness. This combination of survivalist action and social commentary established a tone for the franchise that distinguished it from other action films of the era, emphasizing psychological realism alongside thrilling physical feats. The narrative of First Blood examines themes of alienation, institutional failure, and the long-term consequences of war. The local sheriff and his deputies, who perceive Rambo as a dangerous outsider, fail to recognize his trauma and capabilities, prompting a confrontation that escalates into a tense and suspenseful conflict. Rambo's resourcefulness is showcased through his use of improvised traps, camouflage, and survival tactics, highlighting his intelligence and adaptability. The film's cinematography, including point-of-view shots and tracking sequences through the wilderness, immerses the audience in Rambo's perspective, creating tension and empathy simultaneously. The combination of action, character study, and social critique earned First Blood critical acclaim and commercial success, solidifying Stallone's status as a leading action star and establishing John Rambo as a cultural icon. The franchise's sequel, Rambo, First Blood Part 2, 1985, expanded the narrative from domestic conflict to an international stage, reflecting both audience expectations and the geopolitical context of the mid-1980s. In this installment, Rambo is recruited by government officials to return to Vietnam to rescue American prisoners of war, a premise that combines patriotic duty with personal redemption. The film amplifies the scale of action compared to its predecessor, incorporating elaborate set pieces, helicopter chases, and firefights that emphasize both spectacle and tension. While some critics noted a reduction in the psychological nuance of the original film, the sequel's visual intensity, strategic combat sequences, and Stallone's commanding presence reinforced Rambo's enduring appeal. The production involved filming in Thailand to simulate the Vietnamese landscape, employing practical effects, stunt coordination, and location work to create a believable and immersive environment. The success of this sequel cemented Rambo's identity as an archetypal action hero and expanded the franchise's international reach. Rambo 3, 1988, continued to situate the character within global conflicts, this time in Afghanistan during the Soviet invasion. The plot revolves around Rambo undertaking a mission to rescue his former mentor, Colonel Troutman, from Soviet captivity, reinforcing themes of loyalty, personal responsibility, and the moral imperatives of intervention. The action sequences were increasingly ambitious, including large-scale firefights, explosive set pieces, and Rambo's near-mythical ability to single-handedly overcome superior forces. Filming in challenging terrains, coordinating pyrotechnics, and managing helicopter stunts required meticulous planning and technical precision. Critics debated the balance between spectacle and character depth, but audiences responded positively to the combination of thrilling action and Rambo's consistent characterization as a highly skilled, intelligent, and morally guided warrior. This installment further solidified Rambo's status as a symbol of individual resistance and personal justice in the face of overwhelming external forces. After a long hiatus, Rambo, 2008, reintroduced the character to a contemporary audience, reflecting both the maturation of the protagonist and advancements in cinematic technology. Set in Burma, the film depicts Rambo leading a rescue mission to save kidnapped missionaries, combining modern warfare depictions with character-driven narrative. The action sequences incorporated both practical stunts and controlled digital effects, balancing realism with cinematic spectacle. Rambo's tactical intelligence, physical skill, and psychological resilience were central to the narrative, while the portrayal of moral ambiguity and ethical complexity added narrative depth. This installment explored the consequences of prolonged engagement in violent conflicts, examining Rambo's interactions with civilians, mercenaries, and antagonists to highlight themes of trust, loyalty, and the human cost of violence. Stallone's performance demonstrated a remarkable continuity in physicality and character portrayal, bridging the decades since his first appearance and providing a credible evolution of the character. Rambo: Last Blood, 2019, presented a mature Rambo confronting the limitations imposed by age, personal loss, and psychological scars. The narrative revolves around the abduction of the teenage granddaughter of a close friend by a Mexican cartel, compelling Rambo to embark on a personal rescue mission that is both violent and deeply emotional. The film emphasizes personal stakes over large-scale military engagement, showcasing Rambo's strategic planning, use of environmental traps, and combat skills in intense, localized confrontations. Critics offered mixed reviews, praising Stallone's commitment and the action's intensity while noting the heavy reliance on violence as a narrative device. Financially, the film performed moderately well at the international box office and through home media sales and streaming platforms. The conclusion of Last Blood was widely interpreted as the end of the canonical numbered Rambo series, with Stallone confirming that he considered this installment the definitive conclusion to the story of John Rambo. Despite the conclusion of the numbered series, speculation about a so-called Rambo 6 has persisted, fueled by fan interest, online forums, and viral videos. Many of these fan-made trailers depict scenarios in which Rambo, despite his age, returns to confront new threats or protect vulnerable individuals, blending nostalgia with creative extrapolation. However, no official studio announcement or production has confirmed the existence of a direct sequel under this title. Stallone's statements regarding the closure of the canonical series further reinforce that any such depictions remain speculative or fan-created. This phenomenon illustrates the franchise's cultural impact, demonstrating how audiences actively engage with and expand upon beloved characters and narratives in the absence of official material. The officially confirmed future of the franchise lies in the prequel project John Rambo, which will explore the early life and formative experiences of the character during the Vietnam War. Noah Centineo has been cast as the young Rambo, portraying the psychological and physical development that would later define the iconic action hero. The film is directed by Jalmari Helander and written by Rory Haynes and Saurabh Nashavani, with production planned in Thailand beginning in 2026. The prequel will focus on Rambo's military training, battlefield experiences, and personal losses, offering audiences insight into the character's motivations, moral framework, and evolution into the figure recognized in First Blood. Stallone is not expected to appear, allowing the narrative to center entirely on the younger incarnation while maintaining continuity with the broader franchise lore. Exploration of Rambo's early years provides an opportunity to examine the broader historical, social, and political context of the Vietnam War, including the ethical dilemmas, systemic failures, and personal traumas faced by soldiers. By situating the narrative in this period, the prequel can deepen the audience's understanding of Rambo's later decisions and psychological profile. Themes of camaraderie, loyalty, personal sacrifice, and moral ambiguity are expected to be central to the storyline, offering both narrative depth and action-driven sequences. Filming in Thailand allows for authentic recreation of the geographical and cultural environment, while production design, costumes, and military equipment will contribute to historical accuracy. The prequel is positioned to satisfy long-term fans and attract new audiences, bridging generational gaps and expanding the franchise's narrative universe. Action sequences have always been central to the franchise's identity, and the prequel is expected to continue this tradition while emphasizing character development. In First Blood, the use of improvised traps, guerrilla tactics, and survival strategies highlighted Rambo's intelligence and ingenuity. In First Blood Part 2 and Rambo 3, the scale increased, featuring large-scale firefights, helicopter stunts, and complex combat choreography. The 2008 Rambo emphasized both practical stunts and modern cinematic techniques to depict realistic and morally complex action, while Last Blood focused on intense, localized confrontations with personal stakes. Each installment reflects advancements in filmmaking technology, from practical effects and location shooting to controlled digital enhancements, while maintaining the franchise's thematic focus on resilience, morality, and psychological depth. In the prequel, audiences can anticipate detailed portrayals of early military operations, training exercises, and combat scenarios that illustrate Rambo's tactical development and the formative experiences shaping his identity. Supporting characters across the franchise have provided narrative depth, moral contrast, and relational complexity. Colonel Troutman, Rambo's mentor, functions as a moral anchor and emotional touchstone, emphasizing loyalty, guidance, and mentorship. Villains, from corrupt law enforcement in First Blood to international military adversaries and criminal organizations in later films, catalyze Rambo's actions and underscore the stakes of his missions. Allies, civilians, and secondary combatants enrich the narrative, highlighting the consequences of Rambo's decisions and reinforcing themes of trust, sacrifice, and justice. The interplay between Rambo and these characters underscores the ethical and psychological dimensions of his actions, ensuring that the franchise balances action spectacle with character-driven storytelling. The franchise's influence extends beyond cinema, encompassing merchandise, video games, comic books, and cultural discourse. Action figures, collectibles, apparel, and interactive media provide avenues for fan engagement, while academic and critical analyses have examined themes of masculinity, heroism, moral ambiguity, and the psychological impact of war. Rambo has become a symbol of resilience, tactical intelligence, and moral fortitude, referenced across political commentary, advertising, and popular media. The proliferation of fan content, including speculative Rambo 6 material, demonstrates the character's cultural resonance and the dynamic relationship between audiences and narrative property. From a production perspective, the Rambo films illustrate the evolution of action filmmaking. Directors, writers, stunt coordinators, and cinematographers have collaborated to create sequences that are both technically precise and narratively compelling. Advances in camera technology, lighting, editing, and practical effects have allowed the franchise to adapt to contemporary cinematic expectations while retaining continuity and authenticity. Stallone's involvement across decades, as actor, writer, and sometimes producer, has ensured the character's psychological depth and tactical intelligence remain consistent, while allowing the action spectacle to evolve with technological and audience trends. Commercially, the franchise has demonstrated sustained viability. While critical reception has varied, the global audience consistently engaged with the films, particularly in international markets. Box office performance, merchandise sales, and ancillary revenue streams have reinforced the franchise's profitability. Marketing campaigns have leveraged Stallone's star power, iconic imagery, and thematic resonance to attract audiences. Fan engagement and community activity have further amplified interest, illustrating the reciprocal influence between audience participation and franchise development. Speculative narratives about future installments, including potential prequels, spin-offs, and serialized adaptations, continue to expand the franchise's universe. The prequel John Rambo offers opportunities to explore formative events, ethical dilemmas, and character development, providing context for the established storylines while creating new avenues for engagement. Expanded media, including graphic novels, video games, and interactive experiences, can explore secondary characters, historical contexts, and alternative scenarios, enriching the narrative universe and satisfying diverse audience interests. Cultural analysis of Rambo highlights the character's role as an archetype of resilience, tactical skill, and moral complexity. Discussions focus on the ethical implications of violence, the psychological effects of war, and the tension between individual agency and systemic structures. The franchise's depiction of international conflicts, law enforcement, and criminal organizations provides material for analysis regarding power dynamics, political commentary, and narrative construction. Rambo's iconic imagery, including his distinctive physique, weaponry, and visual motifs, has become embedded in global popular culture, influencing advertising, parody, and political symbolism. The Rambo franchise's legacy is defined by its ability to evolve while maintaining core thematic elements. Survival, resilience, moral judgment, and psychological depth remain central to the narrative, while action spectacle, technical innovation, and audience engagement ensure continued relevance. The character of John Rambo, as portrayed by Stallone and interpreted by future actors in the prequel, embodies the balance between physical capability and psychological complexity that distinguishes enduring action heroes. The franchise's continued development, fan engagement, and cultural analysis underscore its significance as both entertainment and a lens for examining broader social and historical themes. Anticipation surrounding the prequel John Rambo and fan speculation about further narratives reflects the enduring fascination with John Rambo as a character, a symbol, and a cinematic icon. The blend of historical context, action spectacle, moral complexity, and psychological realism ensures that the franchise remains relevant, compelling, and adaptable. By exploring formative experiences, ethical dilemmas, and the consequences of conflict, the franchise continues to offer audiences not only thrilling entertainment but also insight into the human condition, resilience, and the costs of a life defined by warfare, survival, and personal conviction. The Rambo series, spanning over 4 decades, exemplifies the potential of action cinema to combine spectacle with depth, leaving an indelible mark on both popular culture and the collective imagination of audiences worldwide. Its legacy persists in cinematic history, fan culture, merchandise, academic discourse, and the ongoing development of new narratives, ensuring that John Rambo will continue to inspire, challenge, and captivate generations to come, embodying courage, skill, morality, and the profound complexities of human experience in extreme circumstances. Rambo and Elena's return to Arizona was quieter than the chaos they had left behind, yet the world they re-entered was far from calm. News of the cartel's sudden collapse had begun to spread, carried through local media, social networks, and whispers among law enforcement agencies. For most, the sudden downfall of such a violent network was miraculous. For Rambo, it was simply the result of years of experience, precision planning, and unwavering resolve. He knew that while the physical threat had been removed, reputations, alliances, and enemies had not disappeared entirely. Violence leaves a legacy, and shadows linger long after the sun rises. The journey home gave Rambo time to reflect on the transformations that had occurred over the past weeks. Elena had evolved from a terrified journalist into a competent, confident fighter, capable of understanding both strategy and morality in the context of survival. Rambo, on the other hand, recognized the persistent toll of his lifestyle, the weight of loss, the constant need for vigilance, and the scars both visible and hidden that came from a lifetime of combat. They traveled in silence for long stretches, the desert stretching endlessly around them, its beauty stark against the backdrop of their recent violence. Once they reached Rambo's compound, they found it untouched, a testament to the fortress-like preparation he had undertaken years before. The walls, the traps, and the hidden caches provided not only security but also a psychological refuge. Rambo allowed Elena a measure of comfort, insisting she rest, eat, and cleanse herself from the dust and grime of their journey. But Rambo himself remained restless. Even in apparent safety, he knew that the world had a way of intruding upon peace, particularly for those who had lived lives defined by conflict. Elena, now able to articulate her experiences more fully, began documenting what had happened. Her notes were meticulous, capturing not only events but the emotional resonance of the journey. She recorded Rambo's tactical brilliance, the subtle lessons in survival and morality, and the human complexities behind acts of violence that were often misunderstood. In doing so, she created a bridge between the stark reality of conflict and the narrative that the public might someday understand. Rambo observed her work silently, approving but without commentary. He understood that her perspective would illuminate aspects of the struggle that he could not, particularly the human cost of the decisions he had made. Their quiet was interrupted by the arrival of local law enforcement and media representatives, drawn to Rambo's compound by word of the cartel's downfall. Rambo met them with his characteristic restraint, answering questions minimally while ensuring that the immediate threat of attention did not compromise safety. Elena acted as a translator of sorts, conveying the essence of events without sensationalism, maintaining focus on truth and survival. The world outside was intrigued by the narrative, fascinated by the mythic figure of Rambo, yet largely unaware of the intricate strategy and moral reasoning that underpinned the violent actions. Amid the growing attention, Rambo was forced to confront memories long buried. The Vietnam jungles, the betrayals of comrades, the countless nights of fear and uncertainty, all returned with renewed clarity. He understood that despite the victory, the ghosts of the past would always remain. The desert had been his refuge, but even here, history demanded acknowledgement. He spent long hours alone, walking the perimeter of his compound, reflecting on mortality, duty, and the consequences of a life lived on the edge of civilization and chaos. The public narrative, however, soon diverged from reality. Media accounts emphasized heroism, dramatized violence, and simplified morality. Rambo, always wary of public perception, refrained from engagement beyond immediate necessity, understanding that the story told to the masses would never capture the nuance, the fear, or the relentless moral calculations that defined the mission. Elena's chronicles, however, preserved the truth. They captured the duality of human nature, courage intertwined with fear, violence entwined with compassion, strategy fused with ethical considerations. Tensions surfaced as remnants of the cartel attempted to regroup. Despite the organization's formal collapse, pockets of loyalists sought revenge, targeting anyone connected to Rambo or Elena. The battle was no longer merely physical, it became psychological, a war of intimidation, sabotage, and manipulation. Rambo responded with measured force, preemptive defenses, and the strategic use of his network of contacts. Elena, having learned from the previous encounters, participated actively, using intelligence, observation, and tactics to counter threats. Together, they maintained the delicate balance of offensive and defensive strategy, ensuring survival while minimizing further bloodshed. Rambo also faced internal conflict, confronting the nature of his own existence. For decades, he had operated in the shadows, a soldier and survivor whose actions were often morally ambiguous. Now, with victory secured yet consequences inevitable, he contemplated the future. Could a man like him ever truly find peace? Could he allow himself to live without perpetual vigilance, without anticipating betrayal, without responding to every threat with violence? These questions haunted him as the desert night settled once again, silent and eternal, indifferent to human struggle yet providing a space for reflection. Elena became a catalyst for introspection. Her courage, adaptability, and moral clarity challenged Rambo to reconsider not only the tactics he employed but the principles guiding his actions. She asked difficult questions, probed the decisions he had made, and confronted him with the human consequences of his violence. Through these dialogues, Rambo experienced a measure of catharsis, understanding that survival was not merely physical but also psychological. The path forward required not only strategy but also acceptance of the past and the potential for redemption. The climax of their narrative approached as the last remnants of the cartel attempted a desperate, final assault. This confrontation combined elements of strategic brilliance, raw combat, and psychological tension. Rambo's preparation, Elena's insight, and their combined experience turned the attack into a decisive victory. Every action, every calculation, and every choice reflected the culmination of lessons learned across decades of survival, combat, and moral contemplation. By dawn, the threat was extinguished, the narrative of chaos replaced by a fragile but enduring order. In the final moments, Rambo and Elena stood atop a ridge overlooking the desert, the sun rising in a fiery spectacle of color. The land, harsh yet beautiful, reflected the duality of their journey, struggle and triumph, violence and morality, despair and hope. Rambo understood that peace would always be provisional, that vigilance remained necessary, yet he also recognized the significance of survival, courage, and human connection. Elena, standing beside him, embodied the legacy of transformation, resilience, and moral clarity that had emerged from the crucible of their shared experience. Together, they descended toward the horizon, carrying with them the weight of experience, the knowledge of survival, and the hope that even in a world defined by violence, courage and morality could endure. The story of Rambo, the legend of survival, and the emergence of a new generation of resilience intertwined in a narrative that transcended individual heroism, capturing both the brutality and beauty of human endurance. To appreciate the anticipation surrounding Rambo 6, it is important to consider the critical reception and commercial performance of the previous installments. The original First Blood, 1982, was widely acclaimed for its character-driven approach to action cinema. Critics praised its tense atmosphere, psychological depth, and the nuanced portrayal of John Rambo as a man alienated by society. The film's success was not just in box office revenue, which was substantial for its time, but in establishing a narrative template that combined action with emotional and moral complexity. Stallone's performance was lauded for balancing vulnerability and intensity, creating a hero who was both relatable and extraordinary. First Blood grossed over $125 million worldwide, an impressive figure for the era, particularly considering its modest production budget, and it cemented Rambo's place in popular culture. Rambo, First Blood Part 2, 1985, while polarizing among critics, became a commercial juggernaut. The film shifted toward spectacular action and patriotic spectacle, attracting audiences eager for high-intensity sequences and larger-than-life heroism. While some critics criticized the film for its narrative simplicity and glorification of violence, its box office performance, exceeding $300 million globally, underscored the franchise's growing popularity. The success highlighted a trend in 1980s action cinema. Audiences were drawn to physically dominant protagonists confronting clearly defined antagonists, even as underlying themes of trauma and morality continued to inform the story. Rambo 3, 1988, received mixed reviews but maintained a strong global presence. The Cold War context provided both relevance and a visual canvas for large-scale action, though some critics noted that the film relied heavily on spectacle over substance. Despite these critiques, the movie performed well internationally, emphasizing Rambo's universal appeal. The series' combination of physical heroism, moral clarity, and emotional resonance ensured that audiences remained engaged, and the film's action choreography contributed to its lasting cultural imprint. The 2008 film Rambo marked a tonal return to the grounded, darker themes of the original. Critics recognized Stallone's nuanced portrayal of an aging warrior confronting the human cost of violence. The film received praise for its visceral depiction of combat and realistic portrayal of conflict, though some noted that extreme violence might limit its broader audience appeal. Box office performance was solid, particularly internationally, reflecting the franchise's enduring popularity. The film's thematic focus on personal responsibility, justice, and the lingering effects of trauma reinforced Rambo's identity as a deeply human action hero rather than merely a spectacle-driven figure. Rambo, Last Blood, 2019, represented the culmination of the character's arc in terms of personal stakes and narrative closure. Critical reception was mixed, with acknowledgement of Stallone's commitment to the role and the intense action sequences, but criticism arose regarding narrative choices and tonal consistency. Despite this, the film performed reasonably well internationally and served to remind audiences of the franchise's enduring resonance. The narrative emphasized themes of family, vengeance, and closure, signaling the conclusion of Rambo's journey while leaving open questions about his legacy and the potential for continuation, which fuels speculation about a hypothetical Rambo 6. Examining character arcs across the series provides deeper insight into the potential narrative directions for the sixth installment. John Rambo's evolution is marked by repeated confrontations with violence, authority, and moral ambiguity. In First Blood, he is a solitary figure, struggling against systemic misunderstanding and personal trauma. In subsequent films, he is drawn into increasingly complex conflicts, navigating ethical dilemmas while demonstrating unparalleled combat skill and strategic acumen. Across these narratives, Rambo's internal conflicts mirror external threats, creating a layered protagonist whose actions are guided by a personal code of honor and a desire for justice. The interplay between vulnerability and strength, morality and survival, underpins the character's enduring appeal and provides a foundation for exploring new storylines in Rambo 6. Speculative narrative arcs for Rambo 6 draw upon these established themes and character traits. One potential storyline imagines Rambo confronting an international crime syndicate operating with technological sophistication, challenging him to adapt traditional guerrilla tactics to a modern, interconnected battlefield. This narrative could incorporate moral dilemmas related to collateral damage, loyalty, and justice, emphasizing that Rambo's heroism is not defined solely by physical prowess but by his ethical choices. Another arc envisions Rambo mentoring a young ally, bridging generational perspectives on warfare and morality, while confronting threats that test both characters' skills and moral compass. Such storylines maintain the franchise's historical balance of action, suspense, and emotional depth. The thematic exploration in a potential sixth film could include the consequences of long-term exposure to violence, the struggle for personal redemption, and the impact of legacy. By engaging with contemporary issues such as organized crime, political corruption, or social injustice, the narrative would ensure relevance while honoring the franchise's core identity. Visual storytelling could leverage diverse environments, urban landscapes, remote wilderness, and international settings, to create dynamic action sequences that reflect both modern cinematic expectations and Rambo's survivalist roots. The inclusion of a younger protege or antagonist provides narrative tension and emotional stakes, allowing audiences to witness not only Rambo's tactical expertise but his influence on the broader narrative world. Critical reflection on Rambo's enduring legacy highlights the delicate balance between honoring franchise history and innovating for contemporary audiences. The potential sixth installment would need to navigate fan expectations, maintaining continuity with established character development, thematic consistency, and narrative style. At the same time, the film would benefit from contemporary cinematic techniques, including advanced action choreography, realistic depictions of conflict, and exploration of complex socio-political contexts. By striking this balance, Rambo 6 could reinforce the series' status as a seminal action franchise while expanding its narrative and thematic scope. In conclusion, understanding the Rambo franchise's critical reception, box office trajectory, and character evolution provides valuable insight into the narrative possibilities and audience expectations for Rambo 6. The series' historical success, both commercially and culturally, underscores the character's resonance and the public's enduring interest in his story. Speculative narrative suggests that a sixth installment could continue to explore themes of survival, morality, and legacy, incorporating contemporary challenges while maintaining the franchise's hallmark blend of intense action and emotional depth. The interplay between established canon and imaginative speculation ensures that discussions around Rambo 6 remain vibrant, reflecting both the character's significance and the evolving landscape of action cinema. The historical context of John Rambo's character is deeply tied to the Vietnam War and its impact on American soldiers, as well as the broader societal reaction to returning veterans. The Vietnam War, fought between 1955 and 1975, was a conflict that left profound psychological and physical scars on those who served. For many soldiers, the experience involved not only the brutality of combat but also the moral ambiguities inherent in guerrilla warfare and the geopolitical complexities of the time. Upon returning to the United States, veterans frequently faced societal indifference or outright hostility. Rambo's character was designed to personify these struggles, embodying the frustration, alienation, and unresolved trauma experienced by those who fought in the war. This prequel film, John Rambo, has the opportunity to explore these formative experiences with greater nuance, illustrating how early missions, encounters with authority, and moments of personal loss shaped Rambo into a highly skilled yet emotionally scarred individual. By grounding the character in historical reality, the filmmakers aim to enhance authenticity while offering audiences a deeper understanding of the psychological complexity behind the legendary action hero. The character's development throughout the franchise illustrates a profound transformation from a disillusioned soldier to an almost mythic figure capable of extraordinary feats. In First Blood, Rambo is introduced as a drifter struggling to reintegrate into civilian life, a man haunted by memories of war and rejected by a society that cannot comprehend his experiences. The sequel, Rambo, First Blood Part 2, expands his narrative by sending him back to the jungles of Vietnam to rescue prisoners of war, showcasing his tactical genius, survival skills, and capacity for violence when justified. Rambo 3 and subsequent films further amplify these traits, placing him in increasingly dangerous global situations and solidifying his status as an unstoppable force. However, these later films often focus on spectacle over psychological depth. By contrast, the prequel seeks to reveal the human elements behind the legend, depicting Rambo's fears, motivations, and moral dilemmas in the formative period of his life. The exploration of these elements will allow audiences to connect with the character on an emotional level, understanding the experiences that forged his skills, resilience, and ultimately, his sense of justice. In addition to character development, the cinematic style of John Rambo is expected to reflect contemporary trends in action filmmaking while honoring the aesthetic of the original series. The original Rambo films utilized practical effects, handheld cameras, and naturalistic lighting to create a gritty, immersive environment. This approach contributed to the sense of realism and tension, making audiences feel the danger and immediacy of Rambo's situations. For the prequel, the filmmakers plan to combine practical stunts with selective visual effects, ensuring that action sequences maintain a grounded, visceral quality. Filming on location in Thailand will provide authentic jungle landscapes and terrain, mirroring the environments encountered by soldiers in Vietnam. The use of practical sets, vehicles, and pyrotechnics will further enhance realism, while modern cinematography techniques allow for dynamic camera movements, aerial shots, and immersive framing that were not as prevalent in the original films. These choices are intended to create a cinematic experience that feels both modern and faithful to the franchise's roots, appealing to both longtime fans and new audiences. Noah Centinio's portrayal of young John Rambo is particularly significant in shaping audience perception of the character. Centinio has been selected for his ability to convey both physicality and emotional depth, two essential traits for portraying Rambo at an earlier stage in his life. Unlike Stallone, who portrayed Rambo as an experienced, battle-hardened veteran, Centinio's Rambo will be in the process of discovering his own abilities, testing his limits, and confronting the moral challenges inherent in combat. This casting choice also allows the filmmakers to explore the formative relationships, friendships, and rivalries that influenced Rambo's development. Mentorship from senior soldiers, camaraderie with peers, and moments of personal loss or triumph are expected to play key roles in the narrative. These relational dynamics will provide a layer of human complexity to the story, illustrating that Rambo's abilities are not merely innate but forged through experience, hardship, and ethical confrontation. The prequel also opens opportunities to examine the geopolitical and historical realities of the Vietnam War. Beyond Rambo's personal experiences, the story can explore the broader context of military operations, political decision-making, and the consequences of conflict for both soldiers and civilians. By integrating these elements, the film can achieve a sense of realism that elevates it above typical action fare, blending entertainment with historical reflection. Scenes depicting military strategy, interactions with local populations, and the ethical dilemmas faced by soldiers can provide a nuanced understanding of the period, while action sequences maintain the tension, danger, and excitement expected from a Rambo film. This balance between historical context and cinematic spectacle has the potential to make John Rambo a unique entry in the franchise, combining emotional resonance with adrenaline-driven sequences. The thematic exploration in John Rambo is expected to be particularly rich, delving into issues of trauma, morality, survival, and identity. Rambo's experiences in the military are likely to confront him with situations that challenge his ethical framework, forcing him to make difficult decisions under extreme pressure. These moments will contribute to his psychological evolution, illustrating how young soldiers are shaped by both personal choices and external circumstances. Themes of alienation and belonging may also be emphasized, as Rambo struggles to reconcile his identity as a soldier with his experiences as a civilian. These explorations provide the emotional core of the narrative, offering audiences a reason to invest in the character beyond his combat prowess. By focusing on these themes, the film aims to balance action with introspection, creating a layered cinematic experience. The days after the final confrontation were quieter than anything Rambo had experienced in decades. The desert, once a battleground of chaos and violence, returned to its indifferent calm. The sun rose and set in predictable patterns, and the wind whispered through the canyons, carrying away traces of the battles fought. Yet the quiet did not mean rest. For Rambo, the aftermath was a time of reflection, a moment to confront the accumulated weight of years, bloodshed, and sacrifice. Elena had become a constant companion in this period of recovery, her presence a reminder that survival was not only about endurance but also connection. She moved through the compound with a newfound confidence, tending to wounds, maintaining supplies, and helping Rambo organize the remnants of his once solitary life. The partnership they had forged under fire had matured into a bond of mutual respect and understanding. She questioned him less now, not out of disinterest, but because she had learned to read the subtle cues of his demeanor, understanding the depth of his experience without needing explicit explanation. Rambo spent long hours walking the perimeter of the compound, his thoughts wandering to the past. The jungles of Vietnam, the streets of guerrilla towns, the faces of comrades long gone, all returned with vivid clarity. Yet, for the first time in decades, he allowed himself to consider a future not dictated by constant survival. He contemplated leaving the desert, reconnecting with the world beyond the confines of sand and stone. But even as the idea took root, he knew that peace was fragile, a provisional state always threatened by forces beyond his control. The local authorities, having learned of the cartel's dismantling, offered assistance and recognition. Rambo, ever cautious, declined accolades and public attention. His work, he understood, was never about recognition, it was about action, about ensuring survival and justice in ways that often went unseen. Elena, however, recognized the importance of documenting the events, both for historical record and for broader awareness. Her writings captured not only the sequence of events but also the moral complexity and human cost inherent in their struggle. Through her, the story of Rambo became more than legend, it became a narrative of human resilience, strategy, and ethical engagement in extreme circumstances. Despite the apparent calm, Rambo remained vigilant. Small signs of cartel remnants attempting to regroup persisted, and he anticipated future threats. Yet he also allowed himself small moments of reflection and even, occasionally, humor. The desert, though harsh, provided a space for contemplation. He repaired equipment, tended to his horses, and revisited techniques that had once been routine but now served more as ritual than necessity. The rituals connected him to the past while anchoring him in the present, a delicate balance between memory and mindfulness. As the days turned into weeks, Elena began venturing beyond the compound, conducting interviews, gathering intelligence, and building networks of support for those affected by cartel violence. Rambo observed her growth with a mixture of pride and caution. He understood the risks involved, the ways in which exposure could invite danger, yet he also recognized her autonomy and resilience. In many ways, she had become a reflection of what he had hoped to instill: courage tempered by judgment, action guided by principle, and a capacity to endure without losing humanity. One evening, as the sun set in a brilliant display of reds and golds, Rambo and Elena sat atop a ridge overlooking the desert. The wind stirred the dust, and the vast emptiness below seemed to absorb both the history of conflict and the quiet of potential peace. Elena asked about his motivations, about why he continued to fight despite the personal cost. Rambo, for the first time with such clarity, spoke not of missions or tactics, but of principle. "It's not about glory," he said. "It's about standing when others cannot. It's about ensuring that even in the worst circumstances, someone remains committed to justice, to survival, to the choices that define us." The conversation led to shared silence, a recognition that words were insufficient to encapsulate the totality of their experience. The desert, indifferent yet majestic, became a metaphor for life itself, harsh, unpredictable, and requiring both respect and resilience. Rambo allowed himself to feel the weight of victory without being consumed by it, a rare equilibrium that he had rarely experienced in the decades of conflict that defined his existence. In the weeks that followed, Rambo began repairing relationships that had long been neglected. He reached out to old comrades where possible, mending connections, exchanging knowledge, and sharing hard-earned wisdom. Elena, too, became a bridge between past and future, her work documenting the realities of cartel violence helping to shape a broader understanding of the social and moral complexities involved. Together, they built a fragile but meaningful network, one that extended the lessons learned in the desert into the wider world. The final act of their journey was internal rather than external. Rambo confronted the culmination of decades of struggle, the balance between survival and humanity, between action and reflection, between violence and principle. In quiet moments at dawn, he allowed himself to grieve the losses endured, to acknowledge the sacrifices made, and to envision a future not dominated by conflict but informed by it. Elena, sitting nearby, understood the depth of his journey, and their shared silence became a testament to resilience, partnership, and the quiet heroism of enduring in a world often defined by chaos. As the narrative drew to a close, the desert stretched before them, endless and untamed. The battles had been fought, victories achieved, and lessons hard-earned. Yet Rambo knew that life remained unpredictable, that survival required constant vigilance, and that morality was never simple. He also knew, however, that courage, intelligence, and human connection could prevail even in the harshest of circumstances. The legend of Rambo, enriched by Elena's perspective, stood not merely as a tale of violence, but as a narrative of endurance, ethical struggle, and the enduring capacity of humanity to confront darkness with resolve. In the quiet, with the sun rising anew, Rambo allowed himself a rare moment of hope. The past remained, indelible and instructive, but the present offered the possibility of balance. Elena's presence, the desert stillness, and the knowledge that action grounded in principle could shape outcomes gave him a sense of purpose beyond mere survival. They descended the ridge together, leaving behind the immediate scars of battle but carrying forward the lessons, the connections, and the hard-won understanding of what it meant to endure, to act, and to live with courage. The Rambo franchise has consistently explored themes that resonate far beyond the scope of conventional action films. Central among these is the examination of trauma and its lasting effects. From the outset, John Rambo is depicted as a man profoundly shaped by his experiences in the Vietnam War. In First Blood, his alienation from society and confrontations with law enforcement underscore the psychological toll of conflict and the struggles of reintegration into civilian life. Subsequent films extend this exploration, showing how prolonged exposure to violence, betrayal, and moral ambiguity shapes Rambo's ethical compass and personal identity. This thematic throughline provides a powerful emotional core, ensuring that even the most spectacular action sequences are grounded in the character's psychological reality. Speculative narratives for Rambo 6 are likely to continue this exploration, potentially portraying Rambo as a man reflecting on the consequences of decades of combat while navigating new forms of conflict in the modern world. Another recurring theme is justice and morality. Across all films, Rambo operates according to a personal code, often in contrast with institutional or governmental authority. This dynamic creates moral tension, emphasizing the character's integrity and resilience in the face of systemic failure. In the original film, Rambo's confrontations with local authorities are not merely physical but ethical, highlighting the injustices faced by veterans and marginalized individuals. Later films expand these stakes to the international arena, but the fundamental principle remains: Rambo's sense of justice guides his actions, even when the costs are high. A sixth installment could explore contemporary dilemmas such as organized crime, corruption, or global conflict, allowing Rambo to apply his moral clarity to new, complex scenarios. Survival and resourcefulness are also core themes. Rambo's ability to navigate hostile environments using intelligence, tactical skill, and improvisation has defined the series. From the forests of rural America to the jungles of Southeast Asia and desert battlefields, his mastery of terrain and combat strategy remains a hallmark of the franchise. For a potential Rambo 6, these survivalist elements could be modernized, incorporating contemporary challenges like urban warfare, digital surveillance, or advanced security systems. The juxtaposition of traditional guerrilla tactics with modern technological threats would reinforce Rambo's adaptability while maintaining the franchise's focus on ingenuity and resilience. Fan expectations for a sixth installment are informed both by nostalgia and by contemporary cinematic standards. Audiences anticipate that the film will deliver high-intensity action sequences while exploring Rambo's character evolution in meaningful ways. Many fans expect a narrative that honors the original tone of the franchise, balancing physical heroism with psychological depth and moral complexity. Additionally, fans are eager to see the integration of a younger character or protege, potentially creating a mentor-student dynamic that expands the emotional and ethical dimensions of the story. These expectations reflect a desire for continuity, innovation, and respect for the franchise's historical legacy. Potential storyboards and sequences for Rambo 6 are imagined by fans and concept artists alike. Action set pieces may include high-stakes urban infiltration, jungle or forest ambushes, and intense confrontations with well-armed adversaries. Visual storytelling could emphasize environmental interaction, showing Rambo using natural and urban settings to his advantage in creative and suspenseful ways. Dramatic tension would likely be heightened through careful pacing, combining stealth, pursuit, and strategic combat with moments of introspection and dialogue. Locations could range from domestic rural landscapes reflecting Rambo's roots to international settings that introduce broader geopolitical stakes, reinforcing the global scope of the franchise. The franchise's influence on global action cinema is profound. Rambo has shaped the archetype of the lone, highly capable warrior, inspiring countless films, video games, and other media. Techniques such as guerrilla combat, environmental adaptation, and strategic improvisation have become staples of the action genre, with filmmakers across the world drawing inspiration from the series. Moreover, Rambo's blend of physicality and psychological complexity has elevated audience expectations for character-driven action narratives. The balance of spectacle and depth seen in the series has influenced both Hollywood and international action cinema, encouraging nuanced portrayals of heroes who are capable yet morally and emotionally layered. Merchandising and media tie-ins further extend the franchise's impact. Collectible figures, replica weapons, video games, and comic adaptations allow audiences to engage with the Rambo universe beyond the films, creating a multifaceted cultural presence. This engagement sustains interest in potential future installments, including Rambo 6, and reinforces the character's iconic status across generations. By combining narrative complexity, visceral action, and commercial appeal, the franchise demonstrates a rare synergy between artistic storytelling and audience engagement. In considering the broader implications of a sixth film, it is clear that Rambo 6 would need to navigate the delicate balance between honoring established canon and innovating for modern audiences. Storytelling would likely integrate contemporary challenges, including political, social, and technological themes, while retaining the franchise's signature focus on morality, survival, and justice. Audience investment in Rambo's journey, combined with the character's enduring cultural significance, provides fertile ground for a narrative that is both thrilling and meaningful, reinforcing the franchise's relevance in the current cinematic landscape. Ultimately, Rambo 6, whether realized as a direct continuation or through the narrative lens of the confirmed prequel John Rambo, represents the ongoing vitality of a franchise that has consistently merged action, character study, and ethical inquiry. The speculative narratives, fan discussions, and cultural engagement surrounding the film demonstrate the character's lasting resonance and the enduring power of the Rambo mythos. By continuing to explore themes of trauma, justice, survival, and legacy, the franchise has the potential to deliver a sixth installment that is both spectacular and emotionally compelling, honoring the history of the series while addressing contemporary audience expectations. John Rambo's childhood and early life, which are set to be explored in John Rambo, form the foundation of the character's legendary resilience and complex psychology. Although the original films only hinted at his early experiences, the prequel allows for an in-depth look at the family dynamics, environment, and formative events that contributed to Rambo's development. Growing up in a post-World War II and Cold War-era America, Rambo likely experienced a society grappling with social and economic change, shaping his sense of self and worldview. The film is expected to explore the influences of his family, including the possible presence of mentors, parental figures, and local authority figures who shaped his early moral and ethical understanding. Childhood encounters with adversity, whether in the form of bullies, societal pressures, or personal loss, could serve as narrative devices to illustrate how his sense of survival and self-reliance developed. By portraying these early formative experiences, the prequel provides context for Rambo's later actions and the psychological armor he builds over time. The audience will gain insight into how his innate skills and psychological resilience were honed long before the jungle battles and guerrilla warfare that defined the adult Rambo. The supporting characters in the film are anticipated to be both catalysts for Rambo's growth and reflections of the larger conflicts surrounding him. Military mentors, peers, commanding officers, and fellow soldiers are expected to play integral roles, shaping his combat skills, ethical framework, and understanding of leadership. Interpersonal relationships within the military context may also highlight the bonds and tensions inherent in wartime environments. Friendships forged in the crucible of training and combat could later inform Rambo's loyalty and moral code, while betrayals or losses may contribute to his eventual wariness of authority and cynicism about institutional motives. The presence of antagonists, whether enemy combatants or morally ambiguous figures within the military, will provide both narrative tension and opportunities for character development. These conflicts are likely to challenge Rambo's emerging identity, testing his decision-making, resourcefulness, and ability to maintain humanity amidst chaos. The choreography and design of the action sequences in John Rambo are expected to reflect both contemporary cinematic techniques and the franchise's legacy of practical, visceral combat. Hand-to-hand combat, tactical maneuvers, and guerrilla-style engagements are likely to be meticulously planned to convey realism and intensity. Unlike many modern action films that rely heavily on CGI, the production team has emphasized a combination of practical stunts, location-based challenges, and real-world obstacles to create a grounded, immersive experience. Vehicles, terrain, and environmental hazards are anticipated to be integral elements in the sequences, providing dynamic and unpredictable conditions that highlight Rambo's ingenuity and adaptability. Safety protocols and stunt coordination will ensure that the sequences are executed with precision, preserving authenticity while protecting performers. These elements are crucial not only for visual spectacle but also for character storytelling, as each maneuver, escape, and confrontation serves to reveal aspects of Rambo's emerging skill set, mindset, and resilience. The cinematic style of John Rambo is designed to immerse viewers in both the psychological and physical landscapes of Rambo's formative experiences. Cinematography is expected to employ a mix of wide, sweeping shots to convey the scale of the jungle and combat zones, alongside tight, handheld framing that emphasizes the tension, immediacy, and personal stakes of individual confrontations. Lighting and color grading may be used strategically to evoke mood, highlighting contrasts between the verdant but dangerous jungles, the bleakness of military camps, and the intensity of combat situations. The use of diegetic sound, including environmental noise, distant gunfire, and the subtleties of footsteps and movement, will contribute to immersion and heightened suspense. Additionally, the score is anticipated to complement the emotional and narrative arcs, balancing moments of quiet introspection with high-intensity action cues, potentially incorporating motifs that echo the musical identity established in previous Rambo films. The combination of visual, auditory, and kinetic elements aims to create a holistic cinematic experience that respects the franchise's roots while advancing its storytelling potential. Cultural and historical resonance is an essential aspect of Rambo's legacy, and the prequel offers a unique opportunity to contextualize his character within both wartime and societal frameworks. By exploring Rambo's early years and Vietnam-era experiences, the film can comment on issues such as the psychological toll of combat, the treatment of veterans, and the broader moral dilemmas of war. These themes resonate beyond the confines of the narrative, prompting reflection on the human cost of conflict, the responsibilities of leadership, and the complexities of heroism. Moreover, Rambo has historically served as an emblematic figure of resistance, survival, and individual agency, and by examining his origins, John Rambo has the potential to deepen the cultural understanding of why this character has endured in popular consciousness. The film may also explore the interplay between personal agency and structural forces, illustrating how an individual navigates the demands of duty, morality, and self-preservation in extreme circumstances. The franchise's legacy in the action genre cannot be overstated. From the original First Blood to Rambo, Last Blood, the films have influenced countless action movies, television series, video games, and even military training references. The characters' combination of physical skill, intelligence, resourcefulness, and moral complexity set a benchmark for action heroes, blending visceral spectacle with psychological depth. Each film in the series expanded the scope of Rambo's capabilities, from surviving local law enforcement to engaging in global conflicts. However, while later films emphasized large-scale action and cinematic spectacle, John Rambo promises a return to the character-driven, psychologically rich storytelling that defined the early entries. By exploring the origins of his abilities, ethical code, and survival instincts, the prequel situates itself within the broader narrative continuity while offering fresh perspectives and insights into the character's journey. One of the challenges in producing John Rambo is balancing the expectations of longtime fans with the needs of contemporary audiences. The original audience, who experienced First Blood and its sequels during the 1980s and 1990s, may seek continuity, respect for the character's established traits, and nods to iconic sequences or motifs. At the same time, newer viewers, unfamiliar with Stallone's portrayal, require accessible storytelling, compelling action, and character relatability. The prequel's narrative choices, casting, and stylistic approach are all calibrated to satisfy both demographics. By retaining key thematic and visual elements while introducing new perspectives and characters, the film aims to achieve a balance that honors the legacy of the franchise while ensuring relevance in contemporary cinematic culture. One of the most vibrant aspects of the discussion surrounding Rambo 6 is the wide array of fan speculation and imagined storylines. Fans have explored numerous scenarios, each building upon the franchise's established lore while introducing modern challenges and contemporary moral dilemmas. A common theme in these speculative narratives is the idea that Rambo, now older and more introspective, is forced back into action due to a crisis that personalizes global conflict. Unlike previous films where large-scale war or foreign militaries provided the central conflict, these imagined scenarios often focus on criminal organizations, human trafficking rings, or corrupt governmental structures. These modern threats require Rambo not only to deploy his exceptional combat skills but to adapt strategically to a world increasingly dominated by technology, surveillance, and complex geopolitical dynamics. Alternate storylines frequently explore the mentor-student dynamic, imagining Rambo taking a young protege under his wing. This character could be a civilian with latent skills, a former soldier, or even a relative, providing a narrative bridge between past and present generations. Through this relationship, the film could explore themes of legacy, ethical responsibility, and the transfer of knowledge and moral values. Such a storyline would allow audiences to witness Rambo as both a seasoned warrior and a reflective guide, emphasizing the evolution of his character beyond the purely combative. The dynamic also provides an opportunity for the younger character to challenge Rambo's worldview, questioning his methods and philosophy, which would add narrative tension and emotional depth. Another commonly discussed fan concept involves Rambo confronting personal loss or a betrayal that forces him to revisit unresolved elements of his past. This approach aligns with the franchise's ongoing exploration of trauma and psychological complexity. Whether it involves the resurgence of enemies from previous films or entirely new threats, these narratives suggest that Rambo's greatest challenge may not only be physical survival but also grappling with guilt, regret, and the consequences of his actions over decades. Such introspection would provide continuity with the franchise's original themes, reinforcing that the hero's journey is as much about moral and emotional reckoning as it is about physical confrontation. Thematic depth in Rambo 6 would likely continue to emphasize justice, morality, and survival. Justice remains central to Rambo's identity, framing his decisions and shaping the narrative tension. Unlike many modern action heroes whose motivations are externally imposed, Rambo acts according to a deeply ingrained moral compass. This trait allows the character to navigate complex social and political landscapes, confronting adversaries who operate outside conventional law. Morality in this context is nuanced, reflecting both the consequences of violent action and the necessity of confronting evil even when societal structures fail. Survival, both physical and psychological, remains another core element. Rambo's adaptability, ingenuity, and resilience are defining characteristics, and a sixth installment would likely challenge these abilities in new and innovative ways, potentially incorporating urban environments, modern military technology, and cyber elements that test his traditional skills. Casting speculation for Rambo 6 is extensive and often reflects the tension between honoring Sylvester Stallone's iconic portrayal and introducing new talent. Many fan discussions suggest the possibility of Stallone reprising the role in a cameo or as a co-lead, providing continuity and appealing to longtime fans. Others propose casting a younger action star as the protégé, ensuring the franchise remains relevant to contemporary audiences. While no official casting announcements have been made, potential candidates in these fan concepts often include actors known for physicality, charisma, and dramatic capability, ensuring that the dynamic between mentor and protégé is both credible and compelling. Such casting decisions would need to balance nostalgia with innovation, honoring the franchise's history while expanding its appeal to a new generation. Modern action choreography and visual effects are also critical considerations for a hypothetical sixth installment. Advances in stunt coordination, digital effects, and cinematography allow filmmakers to design highly intricate sequences that remain visually coherent and emotionally engaging. Rambo's signature style, improvisational combat, environmental interaction, and strategic use of terrain, can be augmented by modern techniques, creating set pieces that are both spectacular and grounded in his established skills. Fan concepts often suggest sequences combining stealth infiltration, hand-to-hand combat, high-speed pursuits, and environmental manipulation, emphasizing both creativity and tactical intelligence. Incorporating realistic physics, practical stunts, and carefully choreographed sequences ensures that the action remains intense without sacrificing believability. Furthermore, visual storytelling techniques could be employed to enhance thematic resonance. For example, flashbacks, slow-motion sequences, and point-of-view shots could convey Rambo's internal reflections, providing insight into his psychological state and moral reasoning. Such approaches allow audiences to engage with the narrative on multiple levels, experiencing both the visceral thrill of action and the contemplative depth of character exploration. Color grading, lighting, and sound design could further reinforce thematic elements, differentiating between past trauma, present danger, and moments of introspection, creating a cinematic texture that complements the narrative complexity. Cultural comparisons provide additional context for understanding Rambo 6's potential place in the modern action landscape. The franchise's influence on global cinema is profound, establishing benchmarks for lone hero narratives, survivalist storytelling, and ethically complex protagonists. Contemporary franchises such as John Wick, Mad Max, and The Expendables owe aspects of their visual style, character archetypes, and narrative pacing to the groundwork laid by Rambo. In this context, a sixth installment would need to acknowledge these influences while reaffirming the distinctive qualities that have defined Rambo: psychological depth, moral integrity, tactical ingenuity, and physical prowess. Balancing homage with innovation is crucial to ensuring the film's relevance and resonance with both long-standing fans and new audiences. Finally, fan reception and expectations underscore the narrative pressures facing a potential Rambo 6. Audiences anticipate a story that is both thrilling and thematically rich, offering closure while leaving space for reflection and imagination. The integration of familiar motifs, such as survival tactics, moral dilemmas, and confrontation with corruption, alongside contemporary narrative elements ensures that the franchise maintains its identity while evolving for modern sensibilities. The discourse surrounding these expectations reflects a deep engagement with the character and the series, highlighting the enduring fascination with John Rambo as both a cultural icon and a cinematic hero. The weeks turned into months, and the desert around Rambo's compound settled into an uneasy calm. The story of the cartel's downfall spread quietly through networks of law enforcement, journalists, and locals. Elena's reports, carefully crafted and unflinching in their honesty, began to gain traction. Her work highlighted not only the brutality of organized crime but also the courage and strategic brilliance of those who fought to dismantle it. While Rambo remained largely hidden, his legend grew, fueled both by fact and the mythology that naturally clung to figures like him. Rambo observed the world beyond the desert with cautious detachment. Technology, politics, and media narratives moved at a pace that could be overwhelming, yet he recognized their utility. His past missions, once isolated by geography and circumstance, now intersected indirectly with public perception and the flow of information. He was aware that the legacy of his actions could inspire, warn, and guide, even if his own involvement remained largely anonymous. The desert had always been his refuge, but now it also served as a vantage point from which to survey the broader consequences of his decisions. Elena, emboldened by her experiences, began building networks of advocacy for communities affected by cartel violence. Her reporting, coupled with actionable intelligence, brought attention to issues that had long been ignored. She traveled cautiously, mindful of remaining threats, but her courage and moral clarity attracted allies who amplified her work. Rambo, silently approving, provided guidance only when necessary, emphasizing strategy, timing, and discretion. Their partnership had evolved from survival-based necessity into a collaboration that had real-world impact beyond immediate combat. During this period, Rambo also revisited his own past. He reached out to former comrades, some of whom had survived the wars and missions that had defined their youth. These encounters were measured, cautious, yet healing in their own way. Stories were shared, regrets acknowledged, and lessons revisited. Rambo recognized that his survival had always carried a dual responsibility, to himself and to the memory of those who had not survived. Each conversation reinforced the themes that had underpinned his existence: resilience, moral discernment, and the imperative to act when others could not. One evening, as a desert storm approached, Rambo reflected on the continuum of his life. The winds carried sand across the plateau, erasing footprints as if time itself sought to cleanse the scars of the past. He thought about the young soldiers he had trained, the lives saved and lost, and the unintended consequences of his actions. He understood that legacy was not simply defined by victories or defeats, but by the enduring impact of choices made under pressure, the ethical frameworks upheld amidst chaos, and the transmission of experience to the next generation. Elena, now confident in her role, approached Rambo with a proposal. She suggested documenting his experiences in full, not as a sensationalized account of violence, but as a guide to strategy, resilience, and moral clarity. Rambo considered the idea carefully. The thought of revisiting certain memories was daunting, yet he recognized the value in passing on lessons learned. With his tacit approval, they began the painstaking process of compiling narratives, tactical insights, and philosophical reflections. Each session brought forth stories of courage, fear, loss, and triumph, transforming individual experience into a collective wisdom accessible to others. The desert became both classroom and sanctuary. Training sessions, simulations, and discussions between Rambo and Elena strengthened her understanding of tactical and ethical principles, while simultaneously offering Rambo a sense of continuity and purpose. He realized that teaching, mentoring, and sharing his experience could serve as a form of redemption, a means of influencing the world constructively even after decades defined by conflict. Elena absorbed each lesson with determination, blending intuition, creativity, and pragmatism in ways that reflected both natural aptitude and the intensity of their shared experiences. Meanwhile, remnants of the cartel continued to disperse, some seeking revenge, others attempting to rebuild in fragmented territories. Rambo anticipated these movements, creating contingencies and neutralizing threats before they could materialize. These actions were strategic rather than reactive, demonstrating his evolved approach to conflict, one that balanced lethality with foresight, precision with restraint. Elena assisted in intelligence gathering, often acting as intermediary between local communities and Rambo's interventions, ensuring that collateral damage was minimized and that justice remained purposeful rather than indiscriminate. The months culminated in a moment of profound reflection. Rambo and Elena ascended a ridge overlooking a valley bathed in the golden light of sunrise. The desert stretched endlessly before them, a landscape simultaneously beautiful and indifferent. Rambo contemplated the arc of his life, the countless battles fought, the lives saved and lost, and the enduring necessity of moral vigilance. He realized that heroism was not measured solely by victory or skill, but by the ethical framework guiding action, the courage to endure, and the willingness to act when others falter. Elena, standing beside him, mirrored the transformation that had taken place. She was no longer merely an observer of Rambo's legend, she had become an agent of change, a participant in the broader struggle for justice and moral clarity. The experiences they had shared had forged resilience, understanding, and an unwavering commitment to principles that transcended personal safety or acclaim. Together, they represented a continuum of action and reflection, bridging the gap between past violence and future ethical engagement. As the story reached its quiet culmination, Rambo allowed himself a rare smile, acknowledging that the world remained unpredictable, that challenges would always arise, but that the principles he upheld could endure. The desert, vast and eternal, offered perspective. Survival was necessary, yes, but meaning emerged through courage, reflection, and the cultivation of integrity. Elena's presence, the lessons shared, and the victories, both tactical and moral, formed the foundation of a legacy that would persist beyond immediate visibility, a narrative of resilience, strategy, and enduring humanity. The following months saw a subtle but profound change in Rambo's life. The desert no longer felt like merely a place of solitude and survival, it had become a crucible for reflection, growth, and mentorship. Elena, now an adept strategist and moral compass, worked alongside him, translating his lessons into actionable knowledge for the broader world. They maintained a careful balance, Rambo ensuring safety, Elena pushing forward with intelligence gathering, advocacy, and outreach. The partnership, forged in fire and survival, had evolved into a dynamic force capable of shaping outcomes beyond immediate combat. Rambo began systematically cataloging the knowledge he had accumulated over decades. Maps, tactical manuals, first-hand accounts of conflict, and reflections on moral decision-making filled journals he had long avoided creating. Each entry became a meditation on survival, strategy, and the ethical dilemmas inherent in violent confrontation. The process was cathartic, offering a measure of closure while ensuring that his experience would guide others. Elena assisted with this endeavor, her clarity of thought complementing Rambo's experiential wisdom, creating a synergy that transformed individual insight into collective knowledge. Their work extended beyond the desert. Local authorities, NGOs, and communities affected by cartel activity began to recognize the effectiveness of Rambo's interventions. While he refused public accolades, preferring anonymity, his influence became tangible in the stabilization of previously threatened regions. Elena's writings and strategic advisories amplified his impact, blending field expertise with communication and advocacy. Together, they had constructed a network that bridged survival, justice, and moral responsibility, a lasting imprint on a world often indifferent to individual effort. Rambo's reflections turned increasingly inward. He contemplated mortality, legacy, and the ethical dimensions of action. Decades of combat, trauma, and survival had shaped him into a figure simultaneously feared and respected, yet he recognized that legacy was not defined solely by legend or violence. It was measured by the lives influenced, the lessons transmitted, and the moral framework sustained under pressure. In moments of quiet, watching the desert sun streak the horizon with fire and gold, he acknowledged that the battles fought were only a fraction of the human struggle, and that wisdom, integrity, and mentorship were equally critical in shaping enduring outcomes. Elena confronted him with questions that had grown sharper over time. "Do you think it's possible to truly escape this life?" she asked. "To live without anticipating violence, without calculating threat constantly?" Rambo considered her question carefully. "Perhaps not completely," he replied. "But it is possible to choose what defines you. Survival is instinct. Meaning comes from how you use that instinct, how you shape the world around you, and how you prepare others to carry that forward." Her eyes reflected understanding and determination. She had not only survived, she had evolved, and the lessons she had absorbed promised a continuation of Rambo's influence in a world beyond immediate combat. The subtle tension of external threats persisted. Isolated factions of the cartel, emboldened yet fractured, attempted sporadic acts of revenge. Rambo anticipated and neutralized these, blending tactical precision with moral restraint. The desert remained both sanctuary and battleground, a place where preparation and foresight ensured that violence was necessary but controlled, and that justice remained intentional rather than reactionary. Elena's role in intelligence gathering and local coordination was indispensable, demonstrating the value of strategic partnership and reinforcing the theme that heroism often required collaboration, not solitary action. Rambo also began training local youth and young recruits in principles of strategy, survival, and moral clarity. These sessions were rigorous, blending physical endurance with psychological training. He emphasized critical thinking, ethical decision-making, and anticipation of consequence. His instruction went beyond combat, it was an education in resilience, judgment, and integrity. Elena documented these sessions, ensuring that the knowledge would survive beyond the immediate participants, available for future generations. The desert, once a site of isolation, became a locus of mentorship and preparation, extending Rambo's influence far beyond personal survival. The months culminated in a final confrontation of principle rather than combat. A cartel faction, desperate and reckless, attempted to manipulate local politics and community tensions to regain influence. Rambo and Elena intervened not with overwhelming force, but with strategic precision, leveraging knowledge, alliances, and timing to dismantle the threat efficiently. The operation was a testament to the lessons learned across decades, strategy informed by experience, courage tempered by principle, and action guided by foresight. The confrontation concluded not in destruction but in calculated resolution, symbolizing the maturation of Rambo's approach from raw survival to considered influence. As the desert night settled over Arizona, Rambo and Elena stood together, observing the vast expanse before them. The wind stirred sand across the plateau, erasing footprints, yet leaving behind the intangible marks of wisdom, mentorship, and moral fortitude. Rambo contemplated his life, the choices made, the lives saved and lost, and the legacy being formed. He realized that survival was only the first step, influence, integrity, and preparation of the next generation were equally essential. Elena, now fully realized as both a strategic partner and moral heir, represented the continuity of this legacy, the living embodiment of lessons learned under fire and in reflection. A crucial element of any potential Rambo 6 is the choice of locations and the way environmental storytelling can be used to amplify tension, character development, and visual spectacle. Across the franchise, the environment has always been more than a backdrop, it functions as an active participant in the narrative. In First Blood, the Forests of Hope, Washington, were not merely a setting but a reflection of Rambo's isolation, resourcefulness, and intimate connection with the natural world. In subsequent films, jungles, deserts, and war-torn territories have shaped combat sequences and narrative progression, providing opportunities for strategic improvisation, ambushes, and survivalist ingenuity. For a sixth installment, locations could range from dense urban landscapes to isolated wilderness areas, each chosen not only for visual impact but for the tactical challenges they present. Urban environments, with their narrow alleys, multi-level buildings, and complex infrastructure, would require Rambo to adapt his traditional guerrilla skills to modern obstacles, while remote natural settings could allow for traditional survival and tracking techniques that reflect his long-standing mastery of terrain. Environmental storytelling could also be used to convey character psychology and narrative tension. Contrasting open, vulnerable spaces with confined, claustrophobic settings might highlight Rambo's internal state, creating a visual parallel between physical entrapment and psychological struggle. Natural elements, rivers, forests, mountains, could be used both as tactical tools and symbolic representations of the challenges Rambo faces. In urban scenarios, technological surveillance, drones, and electronic barriers could introduce a modern challenge, forcing him to adapt and innovate while emphasizing his resourcefulness and intellectual agility. Such careful integration of environment into narrative and action sequences would maintain continuity with the franchise's established visual style while incorporating contemporary cinematic expectations. Action sequences in Rambo 6 would be expected to blend realism with spectacular choreography, ensuring both audience engagement and narrative coherence. Across the franchise, Rambo's combat skills have included hand-to-hand fighting, tactical use of improvised weapons, stealth infiltration, and exploitation of terrain for strategic advantage. A modern installment could incorporate contemporary military tactics, such as small unit maneuvers, counter-surveillance, and adaptive responses to technologically enhanced threats. Maintaining realism in these sequences is critical. Practical stunts, well-choreographed combat, and environmental interaction reinforce the plausibility of Rambo's actions, ensuring that audiences remain invested in both the narrative and the spectacle. Rambo's ethical and moral challenges have always been a defining aspect of his character, and a sixth installment could explore these elements in modern contexts. Whereas previous films often depicted clear-cut antagonists, contemporary storytelling might emphasize morally ambiguous threats, forcing Rambo to navigate dilemmas where right and wrong are not easily defined. Decisions regarding collateral damage, civilian safety, and strategic sacrifice could be central narrative drivers, emphasizing that heroism entails difficult choices and personal responsibility. In addition, confronting systemic corruption, multinational criminal networks, or political conspiracies would challenge Rambo's adaptability and moral compass, reinforcing the franchise's historical focus on ethical complexity alongside physical prowess. The potential narrative resolution for a sixth film would likely aim to balance closure with openness, reflecting both the character's journey and audience expectations. While the franchise has previously explored themes of vengeance, justice, and personal redemption, Rambo 6 could offer a synthesis of these themes, emphasizing legacy, mentorship, and moral triumph. The inclusion of a younger character or protege could facilitate emotional resonance, as Rambo's influence extends beyond immediate survival to shaping the moral and ethical perspectives of others. Such a resolution would honor the character's long-standing themes while providing a contemporary narrative framework that allows the franchise to evolve for new audiences. From a cinematic perspective, the integration of lighting, sound design, and cinematography could further enhance the narrative and thematic impact of Rambo 6. Visual contrasts, dynamic camera movement, and soundscapes that reflect environmental and emotional conditions would heighten suspense, emphasize psychological tension, and provide immersive engagement for viewers. Moments of quiet introspection, juxtaposed with explosive action sequences, could create a rhythm that underscores the franchise's balance between emotional depth and high-octane spectacle. By leveraging modern filmmaking techniques while adhering to established stylistic elements, the sixth installment could achieve both narrative and aesthetic cohesion. Fan expectations also include the continued exploration of Rambo's relationships with allies, adversaries, and the broader world. Interpersonal dynamics provide narrative richness, grounding the action in human experience and ethical engagement. Potential interactions could involve moral conflict, betrayal, camaraderie, and mentorship, adding layers of emotional complexity to the story. These relational elements ensure that the film is not solely an action spectacle but a meaningful exploration of heroism, loyalty, and personal responsibility. The global cultural impact of Rambo further informs speculative approaches to a sixth installment. As a symbol of resilience, tactical brilliance, and moral integrity, Rambo represents a benchmark for action heroes across media. His influence extends beyond film into gaming, literature, and popular culture, shaping expectations for both narrative complexity and visual intensity. Incorporating these broader cultural touchstones, a potential Rambo 6 could reference, adapt, or subvert established tropes, creating a film that is both a continuation of the franchise and a reflection of contemporary audience sensibilities. Finally, a potential sixth film would need to reconcile the passage of time with the enduring vitality of the character. Aging, experience, and accumulated trauma could inform both narrative and action design, providing opportunities to explore Rambo's physical limits, psychological resilience, and ethical judgment. The interplay between an older, wiser Rambo and a younger generation of characters could create tension, mentorship, and narrative continuity, allowing the film to honor the past while embracing innovation. Such considerations ensure that Rambo's story remains compelling, relevant, and emotionally resonant, positioning Rambo 6 as both a tribute to the franchise's legacy and a forward-looking exploration of heroism, morality, and survival. The production design of John Rambo plays a critical role in immersing the audience in both the historical and psychological world of the character. Authenticity in sets, props, costumes, and military equipment is paramount, given that the film is rooted in the Vietnam War era and seeks to depict both military operations and the personal experiences of young soldiers. Costume design will reflect military uniforms and gear specific to the period, including fatigues, boots, helmets, weaponry, and personal accessories that reinforce the realism of the environment. Props, such as weapons, communication devices, maps, and survival tools, will be sourced and recreated to match historical accuracy, contributing to the tactile authenticity of Rambo's world. Set construction will replicate military camps, training facilities, and jungle encampments, often blending location shooting with built sets to balance accessibility, safety, and cinematic control. Attention to detail in these areas ensures that every frame conveys a believable and historically grounded environment, while simultaneously supporting narrative and character development. The evolution of Rambo across the franchise provides a framework for understanding the prequel's narrative and thematic priorities. In the original First Blood, the focus was on Rambo's alienation and the tension between the individual and authority. The sequel, Rambo, First Blood Part 2, expanded the scope to international conflict and the pursuit of justice for fellow soldiers, emphasizing heroism in the face of moral and physical adversity. Rambo 3 introduced a more global lens, incorporating large-scale military operations and the moral imperatives of intervention. The 2008 film Rambo and Rambo, Last Blood, 2019, further shifted toward high-intensity action, with visceral depictions of combat and revenge narratives. In contrast, John Rambo seeks to blend these elements with a focus on psychological realism, formative experiences, and character evolution. By exploring Rambo's youth and early exposure to combat and moral dilemmas, the prequel adds depth to the character's later heroics, showing that his exceptional skills, resilience, and moral code were not innate but forged through lived experience, training, and adversity. The depiction of antagonists in John Rambo is anticipated to be complex and multidimensional. Unlike the earlier films, where antagonists were often clearly delineated as enemy soldiers or corrupt officials, the prequel allows for a nuanced portrayal of conflict. Antagonists may include fellow soldiers whose moral choices differ from Rambo's, commanding officers whose directives create ethical tension, or enemy combatants who challenge his tactical and moral abilities. These adversaries serve not only as sources of narrative tension but also as instruments for character development, forcing Rambo to make critical decisions that shape his emerging ethical framework and survival instincts. Such complexity ensures that the film goes beyond a simple hero versus villain paradigm, reflecting the ambiguities inherent in war and human behavior. By presenting morally gray characters, the narrative challenges viewers to consider the consequences of actions and the ethical dimensions of leadership, obedience, and personal agency. Audience expectations for John Rambo are shaped by decades of franchise history and the cultural significance of the character. Longtime fans anticipate continuity in thematic elements, iconic motifs, and the character's core traits, including resilience, resourcefulness, and moral fortitude. They may also expect nods to the visual and auditory identity established in previous films, such as specific camera angles, musical cues, or tactical maneuvers that evoke nostalgia. New audiences, particularly those unfamiliar with Sylvester Stallone's portrayal, require accessible storytelling, relatable character development, and engaging action sequences. Balancing these expectations is a critical challenge for the filmmakers, who aim to honor the legacy of the franchise while introducing fresh perspectives. Early reactions to casting announcements and production news suggest curiosity and excitement, highlighting the enduring appeal of the Rambo mythos across generations and cultures. Marketing strategies for John Rambo are likely to leverage both traditional and modern platforms. Anticipated campaigns may include trailers, social media engagement, interviews with cast and crew, featurettes highlighting production design and action sequences, and tie-ins with franchise merchandise. Merchandise may include collectible items such as action figures, apparel, posters, and digital content, appealing to both longtime fans and collectors. Fan engagement may also involve interactive experiences, virtual reality or augmented reality elements, and behind-the-scenes content that allows audiences to explore the making of the film. The strategic integration of marketing with production storytelling enhances anticipation, builds audience investment, and ensures that the release of the film resonates widely both in the domestic market and internationally. The legacy of Rambo in popular culture extends beyond the cinematic universe. Rambo has become an emblematic figure representing survival, resilience, and moral integrity under extreme circumstances. References to Rambo appear in music, literature, video games, military discourse, and even advertising, reflecting the character's pervasive influence. The prequel provides an opportunity to expand this legacy by exploring the origin of these traits, showing how early experiences, formative relationships, and moral challenges shaped a figure who would come to symbolize exceptional endurance and ethical action. By tracing Rambo's transformation from a young soldier into a legendary action hero, John Rambo enhances the franchise's cultural resonance and provides audiences with a richer understanding of why the character remains compelling decades after his initial appearance. Cinematic analysis of the Rambo franchise highlights several recurring stylistic and thematic elements. High-intensity action sequences, practical stunts, dynamic cinematography, and immersive sound design are hallmarks that have defined the series. John Rambo preserves these elements while incorporating contemporary filmmaking techniques, including digital cinematography, advanced visual effects for environmental enhancement, and refined sound mixing to create a fully immersive auditory experience. Thematically, the franchise has consistently explored issues of personal morality, the consequences of violence, alienation, and the tension between individual agency and institutional authority. By situating the prequel within these established thematic frameworks, the filmmakers reinforce continuity while also offering fresh insights into the origins of these concerns, allowing audiences to appreciate the character's complexity from a developmental perspective. The psychological and ethical dimensions of Rambo's journey are central to the prequel's narrative. Young Rambo faces moral dilemmas and situations that test his understanding of right and wrong, his loyalty to comrades, and his capacity for empathy amidst the brutality of war. These moments are crucial in shaping his ethical compass and in developing the resilience that defines his adult persona. The exploration of trauma and coping mechanisms, as well as the negotiation between survival instincts and moral responsibility, adds depth to the narrative, making Rambo not merely an action hero but a profoundly human character. This focus on psychological realism and ethical complexity distinguishes John Rambo from many contemporary action films that prioritize spectacle over character development. The interplay between personal agency and structural forces is another key theme in the prequel. Rambo's actions are influenced not only by his own choices but also by the constraints and demands imposed by military hierarchy, political objectives, and the unpredictability of combat environments. The narrative examines how individuals navigate these external pressures while maintaining their sense of identity, morality, and autonomy. By highlighting this tension, the film provides insight into broader questions about human behavior, leadership, and the moral responsibilities of individuals operating within institutional frameworks. These considerations resonate beyond the immediate narrative, encouraging audiences to reflect on the nature of ethical decision-making in extreme circumstances and the ways in which formative experiences shape long-term behavior. The desert morning arrived with a clarity that felt almost sacred. The first rays of sunlight painted the rocky terrain in shades of gold and crimson, highlighting the stark beauty of a land that had borne witness to countless conflicts. Rambo stood atop a ridge, his eyes scanning the horizon as he reflected on the years of violence, survival, and moral struggle that had defined his life. The weight of memory was heavy, yet tempered by the sense of accomplishment he had achieved, not through notoriety or fame, but through the lives saved, the lessons transmitted, and the legacy carefully cultivated in the shadow of chaos. Elena, now fully confident and self-reliant, joined him silently. She had matured into a formidable presence, a bridge between the harsh realities of conflict and the possibilities of ethical action. Her work documenting the cartel's fall and the strategies employed had garnered attention within communities committed to justice and safety. Yet she remained grounded, understanding that recognition was fleeting and that real impact required careful, deliberate action. Her growth mirrored Rambo's philosophy: skill, courage, and principle must coexist for meaningful outcomes to emerge. Rambo allowed himself a rare moment of vulnerability. He spoke of comrades lost, of mistakes that had haunted him, and of victories that were often overshadowed by the human cost of violence. Elena listened intently, asking questions that were neither judgmental nor superficial. Her presence reminded him that survival and legacy were not solitary endeavors, they were shared through mentorship, understanding, and the willingness to engage deeply with others. The conversation was both cathartic and grounding, offering a measure of closure to a man long defined by relentless struggle. The final remnants of the cartel had been neutralized, their influence diminished to insignificance. Yet Rambo knew that the shadows of the past lingered. He reflected on the countless young men and women who had been caught in the crossfire, the communities that had endured terror, and the ethical dilemmas inherent in his decisions. He understood that heroism was not absolute, it was a balance between action and reflection, survival and moral judgment. Elena, absorbing these insights, recognized that the future required both courage and wisdom, not simply boldness in the face of danger. In the coming weeks, Rambo shifted focus from direct action to preparation for the future. He and Elena worked together to establish training programs, document strategies, and provide guidance for local communities. Their efforts were meticulous, blending tactical knowledge with ethical instruction. Rambo emphasized that survival without principle was hollow, and that the ability to act decisively must always be tempered by moral clarity. Elena's aptitude ensured that these lessons would be preserved and disseminated, creating a living legacy that extended beyond the desert and beyond any single individual. Rambo also faced personal reconciliation. He revisited memories long buried, confronting both triumphs and regrets. The jungles, villages, and battlefields of his past became a mirror reflecting the choices, sacrifices, and consequences that had shaped his life. For the first time, he allowed himself to see these experiences not solely as burdens, but as sources of wisdom, resilience, and insight. The scars of violence, physical and emotional, remained, but they were now framed as evidence of endurance, not defeat. One evening, as the desert sun dipped below the horizon in a blaze of fire red and gold, Rambo and Elena sat atop a cliff overlooking the valley. The wind whispered across the rocks, carrying with it the scent of sand, sage, and distant earth. Rambo spoke quietly, imparting the final lessons of his mentorship, the importance of foresight, moral courage, and adaptability. Elena listened, absorbing not only the tactical wisdom but the philosophical underpinnings of survival and influence. In that moment, it became clear that the narrative of Rambo extended beyond legend or violence. It was now intertwined with the next generation of resilience, leadership, and ethical action. The conversation shifted to the future. Elena expressed her intent to continue her work, advocating for communities affected by violence and documenting the realities often ignored by media and authorities. Rambo, observing her determination, felt a profound sense of assurance. The legacy he had forged, once solitary and shrouded in myth, would now live on through her efforts, tempered by wisdom, guided by principle, and executed with courage. The desert, vast and eternal, provided both context and perspective. Survival was temporary, but influence endured. A potential Rambo 6 offers fertile ground for a range of highly imaginative and tactically sophisticated action sequences. Fans and concept artists have envisioned scenarios that would test both Rambo's physical prowess and strategic intelligence in ways that reflect contemporary threats. For instance, urban combat sequences could involve narrow alleyways, rooftop pursuits, and vertical navigation of buildings, forcing Rambo to combine stealth, hand-to-hand combat, and improvisation with environmental awareness. Vehicles, improvised weapons, and unconventional tools would likely be employed, showcasing his adaptability and ingenuity. In wilderness or jungle settings, sequences could emphasize tracking, survival, and guerrilla tactics, highlighting Rambo's mastery of terrain and his ability to manipulate natural elements for strategic advantage. These sequences would blend high-intensity spectacle with grounded realism, adhering to the franchise's established balance between physicality and tactical brilliance. The psychological depth of Rambo is equally critical to understanding the potential narrative of a sixth installment. Decades of combat, trauma, and moral responsibility have left him a complex, introspective character whose decisions are informed by both experience and ethical reasoning. In a modern context, he may confront enemies who operate within morally gray zones, forcing him to make decisions that balance survival, justice, and ethical integrity. His interactions with allies, such as a younger protege or civilian collaborator, could further highlight his role as mentor and moral guide. These relationships would allow for emotional resonance, illustrating the impact of Rambo's decisions on others and exploring intergenerational perspectives on violence, duty, and heroism. Themes of revenge and redemption are likely to be central to Rambo 6. Across the franchise, revenge has served as a motivator, compelling Rambo to confront past enemies and unresolved conflicts. In a modern setting, revenge could be personal, linked to the protection of innocence or the punishment of systemic injustice. Redemption, on the other hand, might involve Rambo seeking to reconcile with the consequences of his past actions, guiding a younger character toward ethical decision-making, or confronting adversaries in ways that affirm his moral code. Balancing these themes would provide narrative depth, ensuring that the film is emotionally compelling in addition to delivering spectacular action. Interactions with antagonists are particularly crucial for maintaining tension and thematic richness. A sixth installment might feature adversaries who challenge not only Rambo's physical abilities but also his moral judgment and strategic planning. Complex villains, ranging from ruthless crime lords to corrupt officials or morally ambiguous operatives, would provide opportunities to explore power dynamics, ethical compromise, and the consequences of violence. Such interactions would also reinforce Rambo's enduring characteristics, his intelligence, resilience, and commitment to justice, even when faced with overwhelming odds. These confrontations could be framed through layered narratives, flashbacks, or character-driven dialogue, emphasizing psychological tension alongside physical conflict. Allies, too, would play a vital role in the narrative. The inclusion of a younger protege, for instance, allows for mentorship, moral exploration, and the passing on of skills and principles. Supporting characters could also include local guides, civilians in danger, or other veterans, each contributing to narrative complexity and highlighting Rambo's ability to inspire loyalty, trust, and courage in those around him. The dynamic between Rambo and his allies would create opportunities for tension, collaboration, and ethical reflection, reinforcing the franchise's historical focus on relationships and moral responsibility. The interplay between narrative pacing and action design is another critical consideration. Rapid, high-stakes sequences could be interspersed with slower, introspective moments that explore Rambo's internal state, his reflections on past trauma, and the weight of ethical decisions. Cinematic techniques, such as close-ups, point-of-view shots, and environmental soundscapes, could enhance audience immersion, providing a sense of immediacy and emotional engagement. Moments of silence or minimal dialogue could heighten tension, allowing the audience to experience Rambo's mental processes, strategic calculations, and emotional reactions in real time. Modern threats in Rambo 6 could also incorporate technological and geopolitical dimensions. Surveillance drones, cyber threats, encrypted communications, and international crime networks would challenge Rambo to combine traditional survival and combat techniques with adaptive problem-solving. By juxtaposing old-school guerrilla tactics with contemporary warfare challenges, the film could highlight both the timelessness of Rambo's skills and the evolving nature of the threats he faces. This combination ensures that the narrative remains relevant and compelling while staying true to the franchise's core principles. Finally, the potential resolution of Rambo 6 would likely synthesize the themes explored throughout the franchise: survival, justice, revenge, redemption, and moral integrity. A satisfying conclusion could involve Rambo ensuring the safety of innocents, confronting or neutralizing the primary antagonist, and achieving a degree of personal closure or moral reconciliation. The inclusion of a younger character or protege could extend his legacy, illustrating the transfer of knowledge, ethical reasoning, and survival skills to the next generation. Such an ending would balance narrative closure with thematic resonance, honoring the character's journey while leaving space for continued reflection or potential spin-offs. Anticipated key sequences in John Rambo are expected to balance high-octane action with character-driven storytelling. Early sequences may depict Rambo's initial training and combat preparation, emphasizing his physical prowess, adaptability, and resourcefulness. These scenes are likely to feature rigorous obstacle courses, weapons training, and simulations of guerrilla warfare, establishing both his skill set and psychological resilience. Action sequences in actual combat environments will blend tactical strategy with survival instincts, showcasing Rambo's ability to respond to unpredictable threats. Unlike later films, which often focused on large-scale destruction and extended firefights, the prequel emphasizes intelligence, stealth, and ingenuity, highlighting how young Rambo develops the strategic thinking that will define his legendary capabilities. Moments of tension, such as ambushes, escapes, and morally ambiguous confrontations, are designed not merely as spectacle but as narrative devices revealing his ethical decision-making, courage, and leadership potential. Comparisons between Rambo's tactics and skills in the prequel versus the original films provide insight into the evolution of his character. In the early films, particularly First Blood, Rambo relied heavily on survival instincts, improvised weaponry, and tactical acumen developed through experience rather than formal instruction. The prequel allows the audience to witness the origins of these skills, showing rigorous military training, adaptation to challenging environments, and the refinement of combat techniques. Viewers will gain an understanding of how his abilities were cultivated step by step, demonstrating the progression from a young recruit to an elite soldier capable of extraordinary feats. This developmental perspective also clarifies the psychological foundations of his methods, illustrating that Rambo's resourcefulness, patience, and tactical brilliance are as much a product of experience and observation as they are of natural aptitude. By presenting the evolution of these skills, the prequel deepens the audience's appreciation of his later actions and achievements, contextualizing his legendary status within a realistic developmental arc. The soundtrack and musical themes are expected to play an important role in shaping the film's emotional and narrative tone. In the original Rambo films, Jerry Goldsmith's iconic scores, including motifs of tension, heroism, and melancholy, underscored the duality of Rambo as both warrior and vulnerable human being. John Rambo is likely to incorporate a modernized score that honors these motifs while introducing new themes that reflect the character's youth, vulnerability, and formative experiences. Musical cues will enhance both action sequences and introspective moments, emphasizing psychological tension, suspense, and emotional resonance. Diegetic sound, such as jungle ambience, combat noise, and the subtle cues of personal struggle, will complement the musical score, creating an immersive soundscape that heightens narrative impact. By integrating music and sound design thoughtfully, the film can communicate Rambo's internal state, reinforce narrative beats, and evoke continuity with the franchise's established auditory identity. The global impact of the Rambo franchise on action cinema is extensive, influencing both narrative and stylistic conventions. Rambo's combination of physical skill, moral complexity, and survival instinct set a standard for action heroes, inspiring countless films, television series, and video games that emulate his intensity and resourcefulness. The franchise also contributed to the popularization of realistic combat choreography, practical stunts, and the integration of character psychology within action narratives. John Rambo continues this tradition while updating the approach for contemporary audiences, combining authenticity, immersive design, and sophisticated storytelling techniques. By exploring the character's formative years, the prequel expands the franchise's cultural and cinematic significance, demonstrating how action heroes can serve as vehicles for both entertainment and nuanced exploration of human resilience and ethical dilemmas. The potential for spin-offs, sequels, or interconnected stories emerges naturally from the prequel's narrative framework. By exploring the origins of Rambo, the film opens opportunities to delve deeper into the experiences of his peers, mentors, and adversaries. Spin-off narratives could explore the perspectives of fellow soldiers, command figures, or even enemies, expanding the franchise's universe while maintaining thematic continuity. Additionally, the prequel could inspire serialized content, such as streaming series, graphic novels, or digital storytelling projects, which examine unexplored events from Rambo's early life or contextualize his formative experiences within broader military or historical frameworks. This approach allows for sustained engagement with the franchise, appealing to both loyal fans and new audiences seeking rich, interconnected narratives. Audience reception and critical speculation are likely to focus on several key elements. Longtime fans may scrutinize the fidelity of the portrayal,